Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm quitting my job. You'll take care of us while I figure things out. My sister's text lit up my phone, just as I was sipping my afternoon coffee. No greeting, no explanation, just assumption. As if I was an ATM disguised as her older sister. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The same wave of exhaustion I'd carried for years pressed down on my shoulders. Every time someone in the family stumbled, I was expected to catch them. Emotionally, financially, even spiritually. But something inside me snapped that day. Maybe it was the memory of late nights at the office, or the fact that I'd just been offered the job of my dreams, abroad, a chance to breathe, to grow, to live for me. So I typed back, fingers trembling but heart steady. That's not on me. Then I did what I'd never had the courage to do before. I signed the contract. A job overseas. Departure. Monday. I leaned back, exhaling a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The sound of my own freedom was quiet, almost sacred. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Mom. Your sister told me. You're really leaving? What about us? Who will help if things fall apart? There it was, the guilt grenade I'd been dodging my entire life. My throat tightened. I loved them. God, I loved them. But love had turned into obligation somewhere along the way. For years, I'd equated sacrifice with worthiness, believing that saying yes made me a good daughter, a good sister. But in all those yeses, I had lost sight of myself. I took a deep breath, the cursor blinking on my screen like a heartbeat. Mom, I'll always care for you, but I can't carry everyone anymore. I need to live my own life now, the message sent. And in that moment, something inside me unclenched, a quiet revolution in my chest. The next morning, I packed my suitcase. Each folded shirt felt like a small act of rebellion. Each zipped compartment, a boundary sealed. Was I scared? Absolutely. But beneath the fear was something stronger. Peace. I realized we teach people how to treat us. And for too long, I taught my family that I'd always bend, always give, always rescue. This time, I was teaching them something new, that I was not a backup plan. As the plane took off that Monday, I looked out the window, the city shrinking beneath me, the past dissolving into clouds. Sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is not to stay, not to fix, but to go. And when you finally choose yourself, the world has no choice but to adjust. I'm quitting my job. You'll take care of us while I figure things out. My sister's text popped up like a cold slap in the middle of an otherwise calm afternoon. The sunlight was streaming softly through my apartment window, my coffee still warm beside me, and for a brief second, I thought maybe I'd misread it. I reread the message, the bold certainty of her words, the way she'd framed it not as a question but a statement. There was no can you, or would you, just pure expectation, the kind I'd been surrounded by my whole life. My stomach tightened. It wasn't the first time she'd leaned on me, or rather expected me to hold the world steady while she stumbled. Growing up, she was always the one who'd take risks without thinking of the consequences. And somehow, I always ended up cleaning up the mess. I used to tell myself it was love. That's what sisters did, covered for each other, supported each other. But love had slowly turned into duty, and duty had begun to feel like a trap. As I stared at that text, I thought about the last few years, the endless late nights, working overtime to pay bills that weren't even mine, skipping trips, turning down opportunities because family comes first. Everyone always said that like it was a badge of honor, but lately, it felt like a weight chained around my ankles. I loved my family, but I was so tired of being their safety net. The irony was, she hadn't even asked how I was doing. She didn't know about the job offer sitting unread in my inbox that morning. An email that had the power to change everything. A job abroad, a real chance to start over, to be more than the one who holds things together. I felt my pulse quicken as I set my coffee aside and looked at the phone again. Her message sat there, expectant and heavy, like an old echo of every time I'd said yes when I really wanted to say no. For the first time in years, I didn't want to feel guilty for wanting more. I didn't want to keep shrinking myself to make others comfortable. The message wasn't just about her quitting her job. It was about everything she thought I owed her, and everything I had allowed myself to give. And in that moment, I realized something that made my heart ache and my spine straighten at once. I didn't owe anyone my exhaustion anymore. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen as 1,000 emotions crashed inside me. Guilt, anger, love, exhaustion. Every instinct I'd been raised with told me to help, to smooth things over, to be the good one again. But something in me refused to bend this time. I could almost hear my sister's voice in my head, casual and certain, the same tone she'd used for years whenever she needed something. She never asked if I was okay, never considered how much I'd been carrying. She just assumed I'd make room for her weight too. I looked around my apartment, small but mine, and remembered the nights. I cried quietly while paying off her loans. The birthdays I skipped because I was working overtime. The silent sacrifices no one even noticed. I'd built a habit of saying yes so automatically that it had become muscle memory. But this time, that old reflex felt foreign. The thought of saying no didn't feel selfish. It felt like oxygen. For years, I'd mistaken boundaries for betrayal. I thought protecting my peace meant abandoning my family. I thought being a good daughter and sister meant being endlessly available. Emotionally, financially, physically. But what about me? Who was taking care of me while I figured things out? I could feel the courage rising in my chest, shaky but real. I typed slowly, deliberately, each letter heavy with years of unspoken frustration. That's not on me. 4 words. Simple, honest, terrifying. When I hit send, it felt like an earthquake under my skin. My heart pounded. My breath caught. But for the first time in years, I felt a strange, thrilling sense of relief. I wasn't angry at her, not really. I was angry at the pattern, at how easily I'd been written into the role of the dependable one, the caretaker, the fixer. And as my message disappeared into the blue bubble of finality, I realized I was doing something radical. Not out of cruelty, but out of survival. I wasn't turning my back on family. I was just refusing to set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. For the first time, my no wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of love. For me. The job offer sat in my inbox like a door half open, the light spilling out onto a floor I'd been too afraid to cross. It was everything I'd dreamed of, a position in another country, one that promised growth, creativity, and most of all, freedom. The kind of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I had applied almost impulsively, not really believing I'd get it. But when the email came, "We'd love to have you on board. Starting Monday," I just stared at it, stunned. At first, I didn't even tell anyone. Not my sister, not my mom, not even my friends. It felt too fragile, too sacred, like saying it out loud might make it disappear. I reread the details over and over, the contract, the relocation package, the warm congratulations from the HR director who wrote, "We believe you'll make a real impact here." Those words hit something deep in me. Impact. I had been making an impact all my life, just not for myself. For years, every extra hour I worked went into patching someone else's hole. Every dream I delayed was because someone else needed me. Just a little longer. I had mastered the art of postponing my own happiness. But here it was, a life waiting for me on the other side of courage. The offer wasn't just about a job. It was about becoming the kind of woman I'd always wanted to be. Independent, unapologetic, and unafraid of choosing herself. Still, the guilt tugged at me like a thread wrapped too tight around my heart. What would they say? Would my mother think I was abandoning her? Would my sister call me selfish? I'd spent my whole life worrying about how my choices made everyone else feel. For once, I wanted to ask how they made me feel. I took a long breath, opened the email, and hovered over the line that said "Sign contract." My hand trembled, not from doubt, but from the sheer power of what it meant. Signing it would mean letting go of being the family's safety net. It would mean saying yes to something bigger, to myself. So I clicked. And as the digital ink sealed my name at the bottom, I felt something uncoil inside me. A soft, steady rush of relief. The sound of my laptop's faint ding echoed in the quiet room like a bell marking the end of an old chapter. It wasn't that I didn't love them anymore. I did deeply, but love wasn't supposed to feel like a cage. This job abroad wasn't running away. It was running toward the life I'd always been too scared to claim. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with a name that always made my stomach twist a little. Mom. I already knew what was coming before I even opened it. Her text had a rhythm, a tone I'd memorized over the years, a blend of concern, guilt, and quiet manipulation, all tied up in motherly love. Your sister told me, "You're really leaving? What about us? Who will help if things fall apart?" I read it 3 times, my throat tightening with every word. What about us? It wasn't even about me. Not my dreams, not my hard work, not the fact that for once in my life I was choosing something that made me feel alive. It was about the family, the invisible weight that had followed me since childhood. I could almost hear her voice, trembling just enough to make me feel selfish. The guilt hit fast. It always did. My mother wasn't cruel. She was just scared. Scared of change, scared of being left behind. She had spent her whole life depending on me to keep the peace, to fill the spaces my father left empty, to hold things together when my sister spiraled. And in her mind, me leaving wasn't just physical. It was emotional abandonment. I put my phone down on the table and rubbed my temples. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I wanted to scream, to cry, to explain that I wasn't leaving them behind. I was just finally choosing to stand on my own 2 feet. But I knew words wouldn't land the way I meant them to. To them, boundaries sounded like rejection. I picked up the phone again and started typing. Deleted. Typed again. Deleted. How do you tell your mother that loving her doesn't mean losing yourself? How do you say that you can't keep fixing everything without breaking completely? Finally, I wrote what I needed to say. What I should have said years ago. Mom, I'll always care for you. But I can't carry everyone anymore. I need to live my own life now. I stared at it, the blinking cursor daring me to take it back. My fingers hovered for a few seconds before I hit send. The message flew off into the blue, and my heart followed, thudding painfully but firmly. A quiet kind of grief washed over me. Not for leaving, but for realizing that love in our family had always come with conditions. Still, beneath that sadness, there was something new. A calm. A strength that felt both foreign and familiar, like something I'd buried long ago and just found again. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the thought of disappointing them. I was done being the glue that held everyone else's life together, while mine cracked quietly in the corners. Maybe it was time to let things fall apart, just enough for everyone to start picking up their own pieces. The morning of my flight arrived with a soft gray sky and the faint hum of the city outside my window. My suitcase sat by the door, packed with everything that mattered, and nothing that kept me small. I had folded each shirt with care, each pair of shoes a quiet promise to myself that this time, I wasn't coming back out of guilt. I was leaving because I had finally earned the right to choose me. The apartment was still, filled with that fragile silence that comes before change. My phone vibrated a few times. Messages from my sister, a missed call from Mom. But I couldn't bring myself to read them yet. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. For years, every step I took had been guided by someone else's fear. Now, I was finally walking toward something that felt like courage. The taxi arrived, and as I locked the door behind me, I paused for a moment, my hand resting on the handle. This tiny space had witnessed all my versions. The one who cried herself to sleep after paying bills that weren't hers. The one who kept forgiving. The one who thought love meant endless sacrifice. I whispered a quiet goodbye to her, too. She had done her best. But she didn't need to keep surviving anymore. It was time for her to live. The airport felt surreal. Bright, busy, full of lives in motion. I watched people hug, laugh, cry, and I realized how rare it was to actually go. Most people dreamed of leaving. Few ever followed through. My heart pounded as I held my passport and boarding pass, the weight of the future pressing softly against my palm. I thought about Mom, about how her message wasn't meant to hurt me. It was her fear speaking. I thought about my sister, How maybe one day she'd understand that my no wasn't rejection. It was permission for her to grow too. Sometimes love means stepping back, not stepping in. When the announcement called for boarding, I took one last look at the terminal behind me. The life I'd known, the people I'd carried, the version of me that always stayed small to make everyone else comfortable. And then, I walked forward. The plane's engines roared to life, a sound that vibrated in my chest like freedom. As we lifted off, I looked out the window, the city growing smaller beneath the clouds, my old life fading into distance. For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar ache of guilt or the pull of obligation. I felt peace, because I finally understood. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's sacred. It's the first step toward becoming who you were always meant to be. And as the world stretched open beneath me, I knew I wasn't running away. I was finally coming home to myself. Weeks later, I found myself sitting in a small cafe overseas, the kind where the air smells of fresh bread and unfamiliar languages float like music around you. My days were quieter now. No frantic phone calls, no last-minute rescues, no guilt weighing on my chest. I was learning how to exist without apology, how to wake up without checking who needed me first. Sometimes, I still got messages from home. My mom's tone had softened. Not because she fully understood, but because she was beginning to. My sister, surprisingly, had found another job, one she said she actually liked. It turned out the world didn't fall apart when I stopped holding it together. It just rearranged itself. I smiled at that thought, sipping my coffee as sunlight spilled across the table. Leaving hadn't been easy. It had broken something in me before it healed me. But it was worth it. For the first time, I wasn't living out of duty or fear. I was living out of choice. And maybe that's what growing up really means. Realizing that love doesn't always mean staying, and strength doesn't always look like sacrifice. Sometimes it's a plane ticket, a boundary, or a single text that says, "That's not on me." I looked out at the city beyond the cafe window, strange, beautiful, and full of possibility, and smiled. Because somewhere between the fear and the freedom, I'd finally met the woman I was always supposed to become.